In a second-hand set of dimensions, on an astral plane that was never meant to fly, through wavering star mists, see the Great Atuin. Drifting onwards through space, atop the shell of the world's turtle, are 4 giant elephants, upon whose broad shoulders rests the Discworld. Welcome to Dining Table Discworld. We're reading through the Discworld novels and discussing them at our dining table. Be aware there will be spoilers for the current book and others in the series. Hello. Just a few things before the episode properly begins. Firstly, we are approaching the halfway point of the Discworld novels, and with the current schedule, we'll release the Hogfather episode in September 2025. We'd love to have an episode after that with some listener contributions to celebrate being halfway through. So do let us know what you think about Discworld generally, this podcast, any specific novels from Colour of Magic to Hogfather. Also, let us know things you'd like to hear from us. Our email is diningtablediscworld@gmail.com. Our main social media is BlueSky, where we're at dtdiscworld.bsky.social, where I've recently been posting pictures from old Discworld calendars. We are on Facebook as Dining Table Discworld. It can be hard to tell when there's a real comment there because of how Facebook is, but we will keep an eye out. Secondly, Dave and I are going to World Fantasy Con in Brighton at the end of October. If you're also going and want to say hi, just let us know.
Hello, welcome to Dining Table Discworld. I'm Dave.
I'm Kathy.
And today, after a brief detour into the Soul Music cartoon, we are back onto the main series of books. Here we'll be talking about Feet of Clay, book 19. Yes, we're almost halfway. Book 19 of the series, which was published in 1996. So, Kathy, what's our synopsis for this one?
Things are busy in the Ankh-Morpork City Watch. 2 separate reclusive old men have been killed. Commander Vimes, descendant of the city's most famous regicide, is forced to get a coat of arms, and there's rumours of hidden royalty in the Watch. The patrician is being poisoned in his own palace. New dwarf recruit, Cheery, is inventing the science of forensics, while dealing with new territory personally as well. The city's golems are behaving oddly, but everyone knows you can't trust those things, even as they power much of the city's industry. Vimes struggles to figure out how done it, let alone who, as the poison claims unintended victims.
Excellent. So, initial thoughts on this one?
This is one of the ones I really liked when I was younger, and I read it again, I really liked it again. I didn't find myself rereading bits of it quite as much as I had with Men at Arms. I remembered a fair bit of it, having reread it quite a few times in the past. And I remembered the kind of shape of it, but then, it was quite nice to get the bits that had gone a bit vague in my mind, or I couldn't remember exactly how things happened. I really enjoyed it again. Yeah, as you say, there's the expanding watch. There's crime to be solved, but it's not kind of just quite one mystery. It's various mysteries coming together a bit. And obviously poisoning that isn't actually murder. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is almost kind of, for me, kind of peak watch set-up ensemble. At this point, it doesn't feel like we have too many characters. We can spend a bit of time with each of them doing their own thing. It isn't the Vimes show that we get later on from the Watch books. It's everyone has their moment to shine, which is pretty accurate. I think everyone, each of the main Watch characters do get a bit of a...
It struck me in this one how at various points different people had figured out different bits of it, and it was just whether they'd been able to talk to each other, or by the time they do, it's like somebody already knew that, but there are different ways of everyone investigating.
Yeah, and that's definitely... Yeah, later on, I think...
It's a team effort.
Yeah, later on, I think, while they're still good, I think it gets a little bogged down with lots of different new characters coming in. And then, obviously, it splits off into mostly just being all about Vimes, doing Vimes stuff and occasionally showing them up. But oh, yes, I enjoyed it. And once again, completely forgot how the patrician was poisoned. But,
Oh, that I remembered. Because the clue is right there.
Yes, I know the clue is, but it's been a while since I've read it.
It is a poon or play on words.
Yes. So, there we go. Right.
I think I remember that, but not exactly how some of the other stuff tied together.
Yes.
But yes.
I think perhaps more... didn't reread this one as much. Possibly I read Guards, and Men at Arms more than this one.
I think this one and Fifth Elephant were like 2 of my favourite Watch ones. Yeah. So, I've read them quite a bit.
Anyway... Where are we going to start? Because there's lots of things we could talk about here.
Do we want to talk about the makeup of the watch change, or do we want to talk about the royal conspiracy yet again?
I mean, I think if we start on the royal conspiracy and we go from there. So we are 3 for 3 books where we've hit the royal conspiracy. I don't believe they crop up again. It crops up again.
I think it's kind of done with now.
Yeah. I mean, in the first one, obviously, it's not carrots.
Well, it's not the old king, it's just the idea of we should have a king.
Yeah.
How do you decide who's king? Oh, he slays the dragon. And then somebody gets their, nephew to come along and they control the dragon. And then it goes wrong. And then the king is the dragon. And that's a horrifying reign of terror.
Yes. So, and then...
But that's the one that has all the stuff out like bunting and...
Yes.
Well, this is the weird thing with Ankh-Morpork. It's been a republic for, it seems, about 300 years, based on this
based on things that has been said in Feet of Clay, but obviously, previously, it was commented as 2,000 years.
No, that's just nonsense. Doesn't make any sense.
We're just going to put that down to monks of time.
Yeah,
things.
Yeah, I think it's about the throne of Ankh-Morpork being vacant for 2,000 years. I think in maybe sorcery, and I was like, no, that's nonsense, because this book, that wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
300 years makes sense. It's the difference between caring about who was, the Emperor of Rome and having some opinion on, who did what around the time of the British Civil Wars. And clearly, he's very much referencing the British Civil Wars.
Yes. Then in Men-at-Arms, we get the more obvious attempt to get carrots to be the takeover.
Yes.
And you do see a lot more of him being that kind of royal persona. But
you've got the crown birthmark, you've got the sword that can go into stone. But that's not really a big part of it. It seems like that's a driving force, because that's what Edward Dieth wanted as a sort of slightly obsessive loner. Yeah. But then you find out later in the book, he wasn't actually driving things for very long.
Well, that's the start framing, because that's where you think it's going, and then obviously it goes in. And here we have, again, someone else wanting to bring back the monarchy, even acknowledging that, Vetinari is doing a good job, but kind of, it's like, well, he's doing a good job, but it's not really helping me, so let's bring back the monarchy and I can...
This just strikes me as a weird obsessive, a bit like Edward Dieth, but one with better organisational skills.
Yes.
So there is that.
Yeah.
Although, I know, it's just because we mentioned the Roman thing before, it's a bit like how Romans kept saying you should bring the Republic back during the Imperial period, even though, none of them could remember what the Republic was. Oh, the Republic was when it was great. What's this? I mean, it's an emperor rather than a king, but what was this having one guy rule us things? So, people always think, oh, how it was before was better. That's just a thing. This is the book that also introduces Vimes' ancestor, old Stoneface Vimes, or is it Suffer Ye Not Injustice?
Yes. Suffer Ye Not Injustice Vimes.
Who is very clearly supposed to be some weird version of Oliver Cromwell and Guy Fawkes.
Yes,
despite those guys being very opposite guys.
Warts.
So it's mostly that he's like Oliver Cromwell, and giving him Puritan names kind of that. Cromwell kind of allowed more religious liberty, and during that sort of interregnum was the time when a lot of fringe or unusual religious, but also political and social ideas were coming up to the fore. And then it all went a bit wrong. Everyone said, no, we're not doing that again. And all the people with those kind of odd ideas had to go somewhere else, often America. Yes. That's a different thing. So Nob is in something called the Peeled Nuts, which is clearly a reference to the Sealed Knot, which in the UK is the main group that does battle reenactments of battles from the British Civil War. And I think people get very partisan as whether they're royalist or parliamentarian.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I can kind of argue both ways because I studied that at A-level. Charles I was not a good king. And then no one had any plans for what to actually do when we didn't have a king. And that's where that all became quite temporary, because it just kind of relied on Oliver Cromwell holding things together. Because they say stuff about throwing an effigy of old Stoneface on the fire, so that's a little bit Guy Fawkes-ish. But it's kind of a little bit like if Oliver Cromwell, if one of his ancestors was then the chief of police.
Yeah, I mean, old Stoneface was the commander of the City Watch. The old king.
Lorenzo the Kind?
Yes, Lorenzo the Kind, and we definitely think kind is in speech marks.
Oh, it's very euphemistic.
Yeah.
It sounds like he was a monster.
and it, it's the idea that, he did what is needed, and the people celebrated it for him. 6 months he was in power, and then they hung and quartered him. Thank you very much, and he was the one to do what was right. Yeah. I
mean, again, go back to ancient history. There's this whole thing in Athens with the Tyrannicides, who were the two guys that killed the tyrant of Athens. Tyrant at that point just kind of being another word for king. also. And then Athens, didn't have a king for a long time until the whole Hellenistic period. But anyway,
that is a different podcast.
That is a different podcast again. But yes, it's sort of this idea that, because obviously Ankh-Morpork still has nobility.
Yes.
Like Lady Sybil's a noble, and the richest woman in the city, and you've got various people with titles and the kind of old
the Assassin's Guild.
Yes, and you've kind of got this old aristocracy that's still around. Obviously, managed to kind of cling on through it. But again, in classical Athens, when they set up democracy, yes, everyone could vote. Well, male citizens who were legitimate could vote. But you still had rich families, you still had family lines and aristocracy and people who were at the fore of things. So that is a thing that happens, which is why it's a little bit weird, because obviously Ankh-Morpork is very quite England-ish.
Yeah.
Although I have also heard people say it's a little bit like much older New York, but you've kind of got this idea that you have this aristocracy there, but no monarchy, whereas here, obviously, the whole point was the period of that monarchy was just this sort of weird short time.
Yeah.
Although it wasn't like there weren't various other constitutional crises later. But obviously Vimes is someone who, it now seems, it's weird actually, because now Vimes has a regicide, anti-monarchist bloodline.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, well, that's interesting, because I thought the whole point of not liking monarchy was you didn't want things to be bloodlines. So that feels a bit strange. It's a bit like, oh, his ancestor killed a king, so he doesn't like kings. He just didn't like kings and guards, nor did Fred Colin. And again, it was weird having people be all excited, all with the bunting and the plates. But you're a republic. This isn't a thing you have. You don't have to do this. I mean, we don't do this, and we're here.
Yes.
Just sort of looking at oh, the flags are out. Okay, it's one of the flag times, but not sport.
No.
It's just another thing we do.
Different flag time.
Yeah. And I guess it's Pratchett kind of making fun of this potentially very specifically British way of looking at monarchy. But it feels weird because it's a republic.
Yeah, and it's also because obviously they have this idealised view of monarchy, and it's kind of despite the fact that the last king was an absolute monster, and they cite a few things in the book.
It's all very Operation U-Tree.
Stoneface Vimes, despite the fact that he effectively saved the city from this horrendous bloodline of monsters, he's still vilified because he killed a king.
Yes.
But
who's enforcing this? We have regicides who got punished because the king came back.
Well, I think it's the people that kind of did. It's
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, it could be that he then replaced one bad rule with another bad rule, which, in fairness, Cromwell did a lot of things Charles I did, but with less legitimacy.
I mean, I have this feeling.
I'm not getting into this debate from A-level again.
I have this feeling that Stoneface Vimes may well have not been the most popular of rulers.
You do get the sense he's the kind of guy who cancelled Christmas or Hogswatch, because that was obviously also a thing.
Yeah.
But
he only ruled for 6 months and then was.
No, it was a few years of Cromwell here. Yeah. But anyway. So we've got stuff with the nobility, and obviously you've got Vimes in this interesting position, even without the hereditary dislike of kings, which is not a hereditary thing necessarily. He's now married to the richest woman in Ankh-Morpork, and he's got this whole thing about not liking kings. There's that thing he thinks about, the problem with humanity is it bends at the knees. The stuff he thinks about, this thing, he's in this weird class position. He's definitely very working class. We'll get into some of his background a little bit later. And now he's been raised up, and he's just got this awkwardness about it.
At the start of the book, he's shaving himself. Shaving is the one thing he can keep to do for himself,
because everything else is now servants.
But he's now one of those people who has people to do everything for him. He wants a bath, someone will go run it for him. His clothes are cleaned and presented to him. It's like culture shock. It's complete.
And there's one point he sort of points out that while it was regarded as pretty good evidence of criminality to be living in a slum, for some reason owning a whole street of them merely got you invited to the very best social occasions.
Yeah.
So I feel like Pratchett's using Vimes' position to talk about various things. And one thing that happens is that Sybil has repeatedly sent Vimes that he is to go and get a coat of arms.
Yes. Well, he is the commander of the City Watch.
So he goes to this odd place, and there he meets some odd old men, and also a vampire called Dragon King of Arms, because that seems to be a title that he has. And this guy has all the books of nobility and all the different houses and stuff, and all this historical stuff, which he may have witnessed because he is undead. I did quite like how the book for referencing who a noble is called Twerp's Peerage, because in the UK I think the official one's called Burke's Peerage, which is not much better.
No.
So he goes there, and this Dragon Guy starts going on and on about different coats of arms he's made recently, because obviously now the guilds are very important, because obviously there's some of the guilds have been there a long time, beggars, thieves, assassins, but others are quite new, and now there's guilds of butchers, and there's guilds of bakers, and there's guilds of candle makers.
Yes.
Or just candle makers.
Yes.
I don't know if they make the sticks too. That wasn't mentioned.
No,
but
not relevant.
so he goes through all these, and it's clear that now you've got this nouveau riche, and because the guild's like part of, the council advisors, the patrician, and who meet when the patrician is out of action, it's clear that you've got this sort of tension between the old, rich, aristocratic people who obviously think they're better than the others and want to see monarchy restored as long as they can puppet whoever that is. And then you've got the nouveau rich, the guilds. So he makes a comment about making the coat of arms for the head of the Butcher's Guild. And, he's like, his wife said that he had to have one. It was all the thing. It's like, and who am I to argue with a tripe seller's daughter? He's very aware of where these people come from and is incredibly snobby, but also has people's breeding in there, a bit like those kennel club people or people who breed horses. Where's everyone from? Which is also very weird, but a real thing.
Yes, yeah, he does. He is very interested, very concerned with bloodlines, and...
But he reveals two things to Vimes. One is that Vimes himself is not allowed a coat of arms because of Stoneface Vimes, who apparently had a coat of arms, which obviously suggests he was quite high up.
Well, he was the commander of the City Watch.
Yeah. Again, the idea that a police force is that old is a little bit... but okay. But that was sort of struck off because of the regicide. Who decides that when you don't have a king? I don't know, but I guess some people got together and did. So Vimes isn't allowed one, but it's interesting because he was... I don't know if he got one because he was City Watch. Oh, just to say, the book actually at the front, because there's this scene where Dragon describes all the stuff to Vimes, but you actually have the front of the book has the pictures, so you can kind of see what the coat of arms look like, which is good because sometimes that's tricky to keep in mind when you're reading. But you can kind of flip to the front and be like, oh yeah. And there's a lot of puns and plays on words and clever wordplay, and some of it's not that clever, some of it's quite obvious wordplay that makes you groan. And it's funny that something like Pratchett has a scene in which a character is seeing some wordplay and being like, oh, for goodness sake. And I'm like, yes, that's how it is. It's interesting that old Stoneface's shield, it had a marble head, so I think it must have been for him because Stoneface. But it also had fasces, which is an axe with rods on it, which is where the word fascist comes from. And since he had this because he was in policing, I feel like... Is that a thing? It just feels very relevant, like, now? Yeah. Was that intentional? I feel like Pratchett must have known.
I think
it just struck me.
Yeah. But I mean, I think Pratchett doesn't do any of these sort of things without a good reason. And I think it was definitely a nod in that direction. Especially it's the 90s. The police hasn't got much better over the years. But
So the other thing that Dragon reveals is the coat of arms of the Denobses. And Vimes like, Nobs? What, like Corporal Nobby Nobs? And it's like, oh, do you know the gentleman? And then there's basically the suggestion that Nobby is like the Earl of Ankh, which is a surprise to everyone. And later, Nobby kind of has this different class thing, which, again, like Vimes, he's supposedly been elevated and he doesn't know what to do and he just gets really, really drunk about it. And you have one of those classic Pratchett drunk scenes where people are kind of like slurring and babbling on about stuff and going around in circles. And I think that's kind of, as a child, how I thought being drunk must be, because I read quite a bit of Pratchett. Yeah. Then Nobby, having been revealed as the Earl of Ankh, gets invited to a fancy party where he is just basically himself, because he's always himself, it's Nobby. And that is interesting. And then you get all these anonymous plotters considering his potential. And it's the fact that they want him to be the puppet. They want, if he's supposedly the most noble, then he's easily led.
Well, the people know that they're the secret heir to the throne that's in
the watch.
Much like there is a werewolf in the watch. It's
and everyone thinks all these are Nobby.
It's always, and so if someone in the watch suddenly turned out to be nobility, and therefore the next logical one for. It doesn't matter that it's because that is what the people know.
Except what they don't realise is that, yes, you can try and bribe somebody with, like, money and good living, but Nobby, while they're being very subtle and stuff, starts to realise what they're hinting. He realises they want him to volunteer, and he's like, nope, and later leaves a knob-shaped hole in the window.
Yes. Basically going, nope. Vimes will kill me?
He will go spare. This is what he says. It's like, Mr. Vimes will go spare. I mean, he said that when, he thought Vimes would find out he was playing the king at the, reenactment.
Yeah.
The fact that much as he's being kings is like, he'll go Spain.
Yeah.
And then later he finds the Judas goat. Judas goat? Basically the goat that is used to kind of manipulate the other animals in the slaughterhouse. Then you're like, Nobby is the Judas goat.
Yes.
But he knows it.
Yeah. He was, he's... Nobby is not stupid. He's got a certain degree of cunning and I think that they were thinking they could just kind of bribe him and play him. Go, look how much you could do. You could be drinking. You can be enjoying this fine brandy, and to be honest, none of that Nobby wants anyway.
He kept asking where there were pig knuckles. They had all this fancy foie gras and stuff. Whether that is.
So all the things that they were trying to bribe him with, the fine brandy, the cigars, they're not the things he wants. He wants a pint of I can't remember
some sort of real ale sound.
Yeah, and a pig knuckle sandwich. He's a person of the people. It's kind of like Nanny Ogg in some respects. He's a very...
That's what's kind of cool in Masquerade when they met. It's these two.
Yeah,
they're having a chat.
But to be, he's like, no, nope, I'm out here.
The thing is, if they got into a position where they kind of forced him to do it, he'd probably respect that more than them expecting him to volunteer as well. He's like, no one volunteers.
Especially
if somebody asks for a volunteer, he goes backwards. Yes. That's the point.
Okay.
Yeah. So something else we're going to talk about is the sort of changing makeup of the Watch. Obviously, in Men-at-Arms, there's the kind of recruitment spree. There's a lot of dwarves and trolls. This has obviously been formalised somewhat now. We kind of saw in Masquerade, actually, that they've got different kinds of cops. You've got the Cable Street particulars I mentioned as kind of undercover people.
Yeah, so at the start, Carrot's writing a letter home where he talks a bit more about the Watch. To kind of give you a bit of background, you don't see a lot of the expanded Watch other than the outside.
You sort of see there's different people on desk. Sometimes there's a troll, sometimes there's a dwarf. There are obviously humans about.
But he talks about how there's more watch houses. You've got the undercover police force for the undercover crimes.
I don't think we get so much of it later, do we?
Not so much, no. So we get to see a bit more of the...
You get a sense of the paperwork's really mounting on Vimes' desk.
Yes.
But there's gargoyles, so obviously part of what we see is how Vimes is protecting the patrician. He has gargoyles outside, and they mostly do surveillance and guarding, and they can be paid in pigeons. But he's keeping dwarf and troll guards on the patrician's palace, because it's sort of interesting, although they're obviously big parts of the city population, they don't seem to be any part of the leadership political machinations. They don't seem to be part of political life. Obviously they're not aristocracy, but they don't seem to be guilds either.
The guilds seem to be all humans.
Yeah, which again I suppose is...
I'm sure it's some of the kind of metalworking gem ones you might have for few dwarves.
Cheery was in the Alchemist Guild.
Yes.
So there's that. But yeah, it's this idea that Vimes doesn't want humans near it, and he definitely doesn't want Carrot anywhere near an endangered patrician, which then leaves him as the next person who could stand to gain.
Yeah, because for reference, the patrician turns out has been poisoned, falling ill, and he needs to work out what's going on, who's doing it, and quickly, because...
obviously you've got the whole werewolf thing with Angua, which is secret, but people are kind of starting to say, there's werewolf in the Watch, and they're like, is it Nobby? And then by the end, obviously, a golem.
Yes.
Which we will get to. But one of the new recruits, Cheery Littlebottom, who is a dwarf, but also is hired to be another different kind of police officer.
Yes.
Because Vimes has realised he needs someone who can look at things and figure out, in this one particularly, what was the poison? Where's the poison come from? Where's the arsenic? Find the arsenic. Why is there no arsenic anywhere?
Yes.
Which becomes a big thing with... Doesn't Vimes have a dream at one point that an arsenic monster starts coming towards him?
Yeah.
And so you've got Cheery who comes in, because it's basically forensics, but they don't have the word for that yet. No. So Cheery, gets thrown into a job really quickly, the only forensic officer, and then suddenly having to test literally everything in the palace.
Yes.
But the other thing that's cool about Cheery and why it's nice to have him is that Cheery introduces the dwarf gender stuff. So when Cheery arrives, Cheery is referred to as he, because dwarves are he's. Yeah. That's how dwarves are. Which, again, we've spoken about this a little bit before, particularly with kind of Carrot. But what happens is that Angua, being a werewolf, can sort of smell differences between people and knows that Cheery is she, and mentions that some of the other dwarf officers in the Watch are she, but they all go by he. Everyone's got layers of leather and chainmail, they've got beards, helmets, axes, dwarf. It's sort of dwarf first, gender, who cares?
Yeah.
It's very much a dwarf thing. But what happens is that when Angua speaks to Cheery about it, Cheery gets a bit bashed because Cheery is actually a dwarf who wants to identify as she.
Yes.
Which is not a thing that dwarves do.
Or at least not in public, at least.
No. Also, I just kind of realised when we're talking about this. Cheery's lab is the old toilets.
Yes.
You've literally got some new gender stuff in some toilets. So that, I don't know how purposeful that was, but it's like a whole horrible thing now.
Moment,
yeah.
Yes.
What happens is that it says he the whole time, right up until Angua is talking to Cheery about this, at which point it just says Cheery the whole time. And then after that, it says she. Like, that's it. Cheery's a she now. So Angua takes Cheery out, have a bit of girl talk, because Cheery, it's clear, is sure that she wants something else, and she speaks to Angua as a human woman. And again, we've got another not like the other dwarves thing.
Yes.
Because the whole point is Cheery was in the alchemist guild. And again, that's cool. It's like, it's not just that Cheery is someone with gender stuff. It's like Cheery is someone with the various sets of skills. It's a new job. Well, she happens to have some gender stuff. And Angua's really encouraging and takes Cheery to Biers, Biers, the bar that Angua hangs out at. And then Cheery realizes it's full of undead and is a bit like, I don't really like the undead, especially werewolves. And Angua, who's obviously being perceived as a human woman, is like, oh. So you've got this interesting thing where Angua is being an ally to Cheery and letting her come out and giving her space to do that. But then Angua has to stay closeted to Cheery because of Cheery's prejudices. Yes. And then you've got Carrot. Now, during this book, Angua is thinking of leaving Carrot because she realises that Carrot doesn't like dealing with the fact that people are mean about her being a werewolf. There's always a lot of jokes, because a lot of the people in the Watch know, and they're always making jokes. And Carrot doesn't like it because he's not good at dealing with this sort of thing. No. And so she keeps thinking, I should leave, it's for his own good. And it's like, well, I mean... Mm. And then Angua starts helping Cheery. So Vimes keeps noticing that every time Cheery shows up, having not found arsenic again, she's wearing more and more, like, she's wearing lipstick lipstick, some eyeshadow. She's like, has somebody punished you? No, it's eyeshadow.
Ankles.
Oh, and yes, ankle length leather skirt. But yeah. Yes. And what happens is that Angua is sort of helping. Then Angua talks to Carrot, and Carrot's a bit like, that doesn't seem right. And goes, why not? She's like, this is Ankh-Morpork. We have more than one pronoun here. And Carrot, although he's human, obviously raised by dwarves, goes very much into traditional dwarf thing. He's like, well, how will others take it? He's clearly freaking out a bit. And she's like, look, just be cool. Although he does mention having a stepmother.
I think, yeah.
Which was a bit confusing. He's like, oh, my stepmother. And you're like, this is the first mention we have of that. I don't feel it's ever mentioned again. Because this, I think, is the last book where he writes home, really.
Yeah.
And that was just to provide a bit of background. I think it's that thing where Carrot then feels like, it's maybe a bit like how he feels about Angua. It's like, oh, people aren't going to like it. People are going to make... Like, he's a bit freaked out by it because he's not used to dwarf and female. Leaving aside the whole Minty thing, which I think we've now consigned to... That's been retconned somewhat.
Yeah.
But he's also a bit like, well, how will the others take it? And then what happens is Cheery's sort of trying these things out over a course of some days. And then some dwarves come in, officers come in, and Cheery's at the desk. And you can see her ankles. And it's interesting. So two are outraged and tell her off. And poor Cheery, she sort of hoped Angua would be around. She's like, everyone seems a bit calmer and less agitated around Angua. And it's like, yeah, because they know the thing you don't know. Yeah, so two are like, oh, no, outraged, and she's a bit nervous, but she stands her ground. So, there's no rule. One awkwardly gives her a compliment, and then one of them is a bit like, can you lend me the lipstick? Which is, it's just this kind of rage of, people are gonna, when you're your authentic self, and that's against your society, that there is a range of reactions. And it's interesting that Carrot is freaked out by it and Angua tells him not to be, and Cheery doesn't like werewolves, so Angua's staying closeted with Cheery. But then you have the golems, which I think is the next big thing to talk about, but it's just quite complex. Everyone has their own prejudices, because Angua doesn't like golems. No. They are machines.
They're unalive.
Unalive. And so she refers to all golems as it, whereas Carrot and Cheery... Well, Cheery's a bit like, oh, it's like a slave. And Angua's like, no, because it's not a person. And then Carrot's the one who starts saying he. Yeah. So it's interesting that Carrot seems quicker to recognise a golem's personhood than he is to recognise a fellow dwarf's gender presentation. And then Cheery, is kind of coming out and is quite okay with golems but hates werewolves. So it just sort of shows there's a lot of intersections of people's biases and prejudice and stuff. And it's not like a simple, well, these people don't like these other people because of prejudice, and that's bad. It's like everyone's got their own things they're brought up with and way they think of things, and maybe it needs to be a bit challenged for everyone. It's not stated like that, it's just part of the story, but it works.
Exactly, yeah. And I think, for looking at dwarfs and general, I do wonder whether the idea is that you could be known as a female dwarf, but the idea of presenting as a female, similar to a female human.
Well, yeah, I think the idea of having two different gender presentations is seen as a human thing.
Yeah, I think you could.
Yeah, I think it's sort of been alluded to before. For the purposes of courtship and reproduction, dwarves don't necessarily know until you get to that point, and everyone figures out if they're compatible, which does mean that there could be any number of queer relationships. You'd have what we call that, and you'd have no idea because everyone's just he.
Yes.
And then maybe some unions have kids and some unions don't.
But, I mean, I think at the point where one of them is pregnant, kind of gives away. At that point you kind of can go.
Yeah, but that's just the thing. Sometimes dwarves make other dwarves.
Yes, but the idea.
But everyone's he, which then is why it's kind of weird that Carrot says mother. But I think it's just. I think it's kind of an evolving thing Pratt's just come up with, and now he's said to make it. This
is the idea of presenting differently, the idea of actually wanting to say, look, I want to look different to what...
I want to look feminine.
Yes.
In a culture that doesn't really have feminine as a particular option. And I mean, some of the stuff Cheery wants is a little bit stereotypical. She talks about, not wanting to quaff beer but preferring wine, which feels a little bit stereotypy. I think it's just an acknowledgement that she's like, well, no, I am... female, and actually I want to be known as that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's weird. And whether when it was originally written, it was more a sort of thing about sexism or something, which could be the thing. But I think there's obviously some broader gender stuff in there. And obviously, since then that's been a whole thing. And Pratchett, later books, you get a lot more into this, so we'll get to that. But yeah, Cheery feels like the start of stuff before where kind of dwarves were mentioned as feminine. It's kind of been from a human perspective, mostly. I think it's... Like, you think about in The Truth, there's dwarves that are a couple.
Yeah.
And the human's like, well, which one of you's what? It's like, well, we're both dwarves. It might be more about, kind of queer stuff. Like, oh, one of you's got to be this. Like, well, no, that's just not how it is for us. It's just this really interesting thing. And I do like Cheery, because the other thing is that Cheery is obviously incredibly competent.
Yes, she's excellent.
She's basically invented forensic science.
She's a terrible alchemist. She doesn't... No, she did blow up a really big thing.
That's why she didn't have eyebrows.
But she's a terrible alchemist in The Watch, but she's a great forensic scientist. Yeah,
well, at the point is the alchemists are always blowing things up. But yeah, I think Cheery didn't massively like that either. But the thing is, she's obviously interested in that kind of chemical stuff. That's her interest. And then she's gone into this thing. Turns out to be forensic science. So she's basically just invented forensic science.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah, and I think it's also nice to have another actual female character in The Watch, other than just Angua being the lone in there, in the boys' club.
Yeah, and I mean, eventually, obviously, Angua ends up saving Cheery towards the end of the book by having to transfer into Wolf so she can leap and rescue her from falling into a load of molten wax. And Cheery's wearing silver chainmail the whole time because apparently her cousin might have been killed by a werewolf. But
Cheery comes from Uberwald as well.
Yeah. That's I think they get introduced because you guys are both from Uberwald. Yeah. It's like
and so Cheery's cousin was eaten by a werewolf.
But then later she was like, well, that's just what everyone said. We don't definitely know it's true. It does sound a little bit like Cheery might have been based somewhere near Angua's family, but we'll get to that.
Yeah,
that's like one of my favourite Watch books.
Yeah, that's a later book.
Yeah. But I think the point is Cheery's come from a background where the werewolves were like these horrible ruling people above ground who weren't very safe. So, of course, she doesn't feel great about werewolves. But then when she was Angua's one and Angua saved her, she sort of starts to be like, okay, maybe they're not all bad. So did we want to talk about the golems? How do you say it?
Golem.
Sure.
Golem. There's a number of pronunciations here.
So they're have they been mentioned much before?
No, I think this is their first real appear. But yeah, I don't think they were mentioned at all. But the idea is that they're supposed to be in kind of every facet of Ankh-Morpork, just kind of doing the dirty jobs that nobody wants to.
Well, it's sort of like machinery, or it's the stuff that's hidden. So you think about it, you see a shop or a restaurant, you don't see the people in the kitchen generally. You certainly don't see the lorries that come in bringing food. You don't see, it's that part of civic life that's all hidden away and boxed away, particularly in modern day, which I think was a bit more out in the open in the kind of early modern period you've got here. But they are basically, and I think this is where some of the Industrial Revolution stuff, which is obviously such a theme of Discworld more broadly, sort of starts to come in. I mean, so golems are from Jewish mythology, and the idea that you've got these figures shaped out of clay, and then there's words in their heads that mean they come to life and they can do a job.
But they're very good for manual, repetitive work. You have to give them very specific instructions. They can just do repetitive work. They don't sleep. They don't eat.
It's robots, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm considering the word robot originally came from a word in a play, and I think actually meant menial worker. in Russian, I want to say. They're kind of a mechanization, but like a hidden one. But because they're human-shaped...
And they
whole robot
communicate as well,
they can't talk. That's the thing. They can write. So they have like slate boards with them, and they write things on that. So they can understand, but none of them have mouths. So
no, they have tongues. I think they got mouths, but they got not tongues.
No, I don't think they got mouths.
When Dorf's being recreated, Carrot tells he's told how to give him a tongue.
Yeah, but I didn't think they had mouths at all. But anyway, okay. So, and it's sort of thing, every time someone mentions them, it's like, oh, yeah, like, we've got one, and it chops all the wood really well. I mean, Dorfel, who's the main golden character who ends up joining the Watch, he works in the slaughterhouse, so he, basically does all the kind of, like, jointing and all the meat stuff, and he can just do it and all the time. And at one point, when Dorfel describes work, Cheery says, oh, that's awful, and Dorfel says, close. Well, he writes close. Yeah. I only just got that this time, which is that it's awful. But yeah, it said they keep going, and then all the people that own them are a bit like, oh yeah, it gets loads done. It's much better than any other kind of work. And it's like, oh, but they are weird, and I don't trust them. Yeah.
And everyone's got this story about they know somebody whose golem went off, got the wrong instructions, or they weren't told to stop, so they made thousands of matchsticks because they just kept going. Or
like they made a table with like 100 legs.
Yeah, because they weren't.
It's a little bit like the Magician's Apprentice thing. Yes, yeah. The idea that you ask it to sweep and the spell keeps going and going and going. They doesn't stop.
They're these strange creatures,
which is kind of computery sort of.
But also they work and work. They don't have any doubt except for these mystery holy days.
Well, I think the idea is the words in their heads need refreshing. And this is the thing. It's sort of like the priests don't seem to... Like, they are kind of...
Well, they've been outlawed by the priests.
So you can't make more of them.
Yeah, so you can't make more. The priests hate them because... Well,
And, I mean, they're just very interesting as a concept. The nature of free will, of slavery. Because the point is, Cheer is the one that says when her and Angu are looking at the abattoir, and Dorfel describes its work, and Cheer is like, that's slavery. Because, they work all hours, they don't have to sleep, they don't have to eat, so they're not paid.
No.
I mean, they're seen as property. And Angu is like, well, no, it's an it. Angu is the one who's like, no. And then Carrot is very much like he quite quickly. The last thing one of the old men saw before he died was a golem, and he has a little bit of paper with writing on in his mouth, and that's like a golem's attempt at first aid, because the words in your head are what power you. Because if you flip one's head open, take the words out, it just powers down. It's just a terracotta statue. So they sort of realise it looks a bit macabre at first, but then there's a realisation, particularly I think as Carrot starts to try and get to know him and talks to Dorfel as like a person, and again he sees him as a person much, much quicker. He realises, no, he was trying to save... The old man was dying, so he tried to save him the only way he knew how. He put words in somebody's heads.
Yes.
It turns out what happens is loads of golems have gotten together and they've tried to...
Well, create more. They've
created a new golem.
Which I think they kind of... Again, we're on to kings again, because
they tried to make themselves a king.
Yeah, they seem to make... It's an interesting... I'm not sure what kind of drove them to make, this idea that they wanted to make someone over them, someone who possibly could...
Yeah, it's weird, because it's not described as being like it's kind of both their child and their ruler, because the point is all the golems contribute some of their clay to it, but it goes mad. Yes. Because it doesn't... The words in its head are different or something.
Yes, they try and basically give it different words to try and make it...
Yeah, I think they're a bit like, well, we do what we do because we have the words in our heads, but if we wrote better words, maybe that makes someone better. But you can't make someone be... And I think they wanted some form of freedom, but it's interesting that the freedom they want was still being ruled over.
Yeah, well, from them, one of the rules is that a golem must have a master. That is. Yeah, and so you do wonder.
Is it that they're making themselves?
Well, they're making themselves a master. They find some of the. They gave them too many words. It's like some of the words in it are create peace and justice for all, rule us wisely, teach us freedom, lead us to.
That's a lot to put on anyone.
Yes,
particularly something they just made, because that's the thing. It's also sort of their offspring as well.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's a heavy load. It's also interesting, all the golems have, I looked it up, all the golems, I think, have Yiddish names. So, Dorfel means idiot or bumpkin or holy innocent, although this is just based off a very quick internet search, so if this is wrong, like, it could very well be wrong. There's one that's called something like Schmeckel, which is where the word schmuck comes from. A lot of the Yiddish I know is also from American TV, so again, deeply inaccurate. But I noticed one was called Dybbuk, and I was like, is that not a kind of like Jewish ghost? And yeah, that's another mythological thing. But the sort of king golem, the weird golem that was the one that did the murders, was called Meshuggah, which I did look up, and I think I got it right. It means like crazy or insane.
Yeah.
Which again, I have heard on TV.
Yeah.
But I'm always a bit wary with American TV.
Fair.
But yeah, so obviously that's the thing Pratchett's done, but although there isn't Christianity on this, there isn't exactly Judaism on this, but he's acknowledged where this concept's come from, what he's using. It's this idea that they've made this thing and now it's not happy about it, and it's making everyone else's problem.
Yes, and I think it's interesting that they try to, it's almost a way of bettering themselves by creating a master for themselves that is their aspirations, that they can hopefully mean that they can be elevated.
Because at one point, people think Dorfel did the murders, and so he's arrested. And it's like, well, is this an arrest or is this confiscation? Is he a person or is he property? Because if he's a person, then maybe he's being charged with murder. But if he's property, then he's just a weapon. And then the golems get together and they have an argument, but because they can't speak, it's all written on the walls of a cellar, just over and over, all over the walls.
That must look crazy.
And then they start killing themselves. Although, again, someone's like, oh, it's gone crazy, it's killing itself. Because, they work with it. The whole point is they do dangerous jobs. Lump hammers coming down and saws and all this stuff because they're made of terracotta. So
yeah, well, it's safe.
And they can be patched. That's the other thing. They're supposed to be very old because a lot of them have been patched up so much. They've just got all these, all this clay over them. And then suddenly this is happening all over the city and they're all writing stuff about regret and clay of my clay.
There's 12 specific ones creates that got King Golem. But it's because they can also feel, because it's part of them, so they can feel it's murdered people. It
murdered 2 old men, because the reason it murdered these 2 old men was because they helped make it, because one of them had a big oven.
Yes.
Because he was interested in dwarf bread, and one of them was kind of I don't know if he's actually a priest, but he's really interested in holy writings, so he had loads and loads of books and things, and was really into theology, I guess, and therefore helped them with the words. So yeah, it's kind of destroyed its creators, and then its other creators destroyed themselves. So it's all a bit unpleasant. Dwarful, because Carrot kind of treats him like a person, and Carrot even shows taking the words out of his head and putting them back in. Dwarfel's the one who sort of seems to have a weird crisis, and then he kind of starts doing things for himself, and then he starts to free things, because of course he's in an abattoir and there are loads of animals everywhere, so he frees them, and they just mill around.
He's writing no master.
Yes, yeah. So he's kind of, well, we've tried this king thing that hasn't worked, now this. And he frees them, and then it's interesting later, when he comes more into his personhood, he actually says they milled around, they didn't try and escape, some of them went back to the pens. Is it scary to be free? And it's like, yes. Yes, it is.
We don't,
because it's kind of thing, although obviously a master-slave relationship is a terrible thing, they've not, obviously they had some thought for themselves, they've done this themselves clandestinely, and somehow found allies to help them, with the old men, but they've always had masters, there's something telling them what to do. And in some respects they don't have... it's kind of like with children, like you kind of have to tell them, because they're left, it's not going to work, but then they learn and grow. And these golems are quite old, but you've also got to think they don't have the basic needs, because at some point you get hungry, or you get tired, and you have to eat, or you have to sleep, or you have to find shelter, or, look after, and they don't even have that. So they don't even have the biology that a human, or a dwarf, or a troll, that an animal would have. To kind of guide what you're doing, they're just without that. Again, that's why I thought so strong of robots.
Yes, very much. The words in the head are kind of like the 3 laws of robotics. Not literally, but the idea, because they do, the words in the head say they can't kill somebody. That's why they're so messed up when their king does start killing people. And I think it's quite nice that the way they kind of move forward is Carrot. Was it Vimes? I can't remember which one. So one of the buys Dorfel from the abattoir. It's
Carrot. Carrot, although I think I'd sort of thought part of it was Vimes is really more focused on the veterinary, so I think Carrot's the main one who's interacting with Dorfel.
Carrot buys Dorfel from the abattoir.
Like $1.
But then puts the receipt in his head. The idea being that, no, you are your own master now, you've been purchased. And after a bit of a crisis of nature and, reality, and
you just get a whole internal thing, which is obviously him having,
he
some
shuts
sort
down
of very...
for a bit and goes. But his now goal is he will work.
He's found a new route to emancipation.
Yes, he will work save up his money, because he doesn't need to, doesn't need to spend it on anything.
Well,
What's he
as I
need it
say,
for?
there's no
Exactly.
food or sleep or anything.
But he is going to go and buy out all the other, golems.
It's pyramid.
Yes. But he's going to work. The whole point is he doesn't want anyone's help. The golems are going to buy themselves. So he's going to save up, he's going to buy one. And then the two of them are going to save up and buy the next one. And then the three of them, and just kind of this building up of a society in some respects. Yeah.
Yeah, well, because we hadn't sort of said, I suppose we said at the beginning, obviously Dwarful joins the watch, and then he's a bit like, no, I'm going to be paid. And it's like, why would we pay you? You don't need anything. It's like, I literally do not need to sleep. I do not need to eat. I can be on duty all the time. So you're going to pay me double a regular watchman. Yeah. Also, there's the fact that he cannot be, because the thing is he's ceramic, because he gets damaged, and Carrot takes him to the potter's yard, and Dwarflaw starts to get quite RoboCop as well, like very obviously that's it. Also, there's a bit of the final bit I think it's a little bit like Terminator 2, because there's like vats of molten stuff.
Yeah, that's
so I mean, but Pratchett's clearly putting in some cool action sequences as well. Where so Carrot's a bit like, we can rebuild him. We have the pottery, and it's this emancipation thing where Dwarfle's going to get the money, because also the thing is he can't really be attacked very easily because he's literally like ceramic and he can be repaired. I mean, it doesn't kind of go into what if the other golems don't want this, but I get the impression that they probably.
I think
they're sort of saying it's weird. It's sort of like, we are property, but also people. So the way we will free ourselves is financially through money. And part of you is a bit like, that doesn't seem great, because if you're people, you should not be property.
Yeah.
But it's this weird thing. And also, I suppose, when Dwarfle tried to free everything it went badly and everyone was frightened. It's like, no, there needs to be a framework, even if not for everyone else, but for ourselves.
Yes. Also,
maybe everyone else needs the receipt in their heads.
But then you're also accepting into the community. It's like, I've freed you.
They've got a purpose as well.
You're now joining the community. And so it means they will still work. They will still do the jobs that they've been doing. It's just that they do it for a bigger reason than and they will need to be paid.
I guess it's mutual aid and stuff as well, and so I mean that's.
I think it's a great little idea of bringing about change to your community, with using change.
Yes. The other thing about Dwarf that's kind of mentioned at the end, because the priests get all angry and could turn up.
They definitely don't like.
Because again, there's this idea that the gods aren't really into this sort of thing. It's a bit blasphemous. Because Dwarf was like, I'm an atheist, and all this lightning rains down, but he's fine because he's made of pottery. Described Dwarful, the ceramic atheist. Fireproof. And what happens is all these priests are trying to say, and he's like, no, I will believe in any god that you can explain to me in rational debate. And they're like, what? But like, look at this. Like, no, that's not good. It's like, do you call that an argument? It's quite funny. And then what happens is Hunan Ridcully, who's the head priest and obviously brother of the Arch-Chancellor, at one point calls him the old China. Which is just the idea that Dwarfle in his time off is sort of going to start debating religious stuff. And also there's been a little bit of a theme throughout with there's one Omnian officer who's I suppose that's the other thing the watch expanding. You've also got a human from a different place because you've got an Omnian keeps offering people pamphlets and talk about stuff, and it's very clearly the Jehovah's Witness of that. That's what the Omnians have become.
Yes.
But he's actually very exciting that Dwarfle wants the pamphlets and would like to chat all about it. So in his off time, that I guess he probably gets, Dwarfle's presumably going to be talking to a load of religious people, trying to get them to explain with rational reasoning their religions. Not something I want to be there for, but I guess somebody's got to do it.
Well, yes, so I'm sure they will enjoy it a bit.
Getting towards the end, stuff I want to talk about was about Cockbill Street. In the course of the patrician being poisoned, everyone's a suspect, all the palace staff. And then it turns out one of the palace staff didn't turn up, one of the maids didn't turn up that morning. And then the Tricer goes down and says, oh, well, everyone seems very sad down there. And she lives in somewhere called Cockbill Street, which immediately pings the Vimes because that's where he grew up. Yeah. So he goes to Cockbill Street and he turns up and it's just as it was. And there's a funeral, and basically this maid from the palace, her grandmother and her baby brother have died. And Vimes realises it's got to be the same thing. At this point, he doesn't know what it is, but it's got to be the same thing. He's like, well, now there's a murder. But the Cockbill Street thing's really interesting because it sort of shows Vimes. He sort of wants to go, but he's always just doing it, for official business and stuff. He turned the corner and stopped. Nothing much had changed. That was the shocking thing. After, too many years, things had no right not to have changed. But washing lines still crisscrossed the street between the grey ancient buildings, antique paint still peeled away in the way cheap paint peeled away when it had been painted on woods too old and rotten to take paint. Cockbill Street's people were usually too penniless to afford decent paint, but always far too proud to use whitewash. And there's this whole idea that they're basically they're the deserving poor.
Yeah.
You know? It sort of goes on a bit. It's like, Cockbill Street was where people lived who were worse than poor because they didn't know how poor they were. If you asked them, they would probably say something like, mustn't grumble, or there's far worse off than us, or we've always kept us head above water and we don't owe nobody nout. And then he thinks about his grandmother, and it's like, the table might not have any food on it, but by gods it was well scrubbed. And that was Cockbill Street, where what you ate was mainly your pride. And it's just this idea of, like, you know, it's something about the meek inheriting the earth. It's like, what did they do to deserve that? They would step aside to let the meek through. And it was this mentality. It was this vague idea that there were rules. And so they went through a life filled with quiet, distracted dread that they weren't quite obeying them. So it's these people who are just trying, and things are bad for them, but they're too proud to say it. And again, this has been written in 90s. And it's just... And in the early 90s, yeah, things weren't great here. And sadly, we've gone back to things not being great again. Yeah. Well, because you and I kind of grew up at the point when things were generally getting better, and we sort of thought that was how things be. And no. And I think now people talk about it more. There's less... I mean, I think some people are probably a bit too proud to ask for help.
Well, always.
If you look at the statistics, the amount of benefits that go unclaimed that people are entitled to and do not get because of the stigma that's been put on it in this country, when the whole point is it's there to help people. But there are a lot of people like that. But I think people do talk about that more, you know. I mean, look, we live in a country where there are more food banks than there are McDonald's. Yeah. Iceland, which is a budget supermarket here, says their main competition is not necessarily other supermarkets, it's food banks, because that's where we are as a nation. And when we were kids, maybe it was mentioned a bit about collecting food for the poor, but it's like once a year for Harvest Festival, you didn't know where any of it went.
Yeah, it was the mystery of the Harvest Festival. You gave them a can of beans.
All the cans are in the church, and then they're gone, and they're helping somebody somewhere. Yeah. But, I mean, when I was a kid, we were told, you know, there are children starving in other countries.
Yeah.
It wasn't here, and it probably was here. A lot of problems that we thought were solved, that people thought were kind of done with, have come rocketing back in the last 15 years. But I think in the 90s when Pratchett was writing this, that was still very much part of it. Now people will talk about things. I think there's a lot more openness, and a lot more conversation, a lot more willingness to help. Whereas before, I think that pride and that sort of not knowing how other people were and thinking you'd be judged, it's still there, but I think it was worse.
Yeah.
And I think it did lead to this sort of thing. And I'm sure Pratchett's writing about stuff that's older as well. But just that Vimes has this in his head, you know, he's dealing with criminals and rich people all the time. And there's just these people who are like decent citizens who things are bad for them, but they won't help themselves because that's not how the rules are. And people are so bound by these rules in their head.
Yeah. And the maid was so terrified as soon as Vimes identified who he was. And she was just terrified because she'd taken a few things that were...
She's taken some leftovers.
Yeah, leftovers. And
old candles.
The burnt-out nubs of the candles that for Patrician's Palace, you know, you wouldn't have out. But for a home like theirs, you'd get an evening or two's light out of to spend some time, you know, doing whatever.
Because the point is her grandmother was mending clothes. Yes, that's how she earned some money.
Mending, or you know, but
and of course it's the members of the household, the old woman and the baby. Yeah, the little boy, the ones who affect first and who die because of it. And this is when Vimes is like, this is a murder now, and I'm not letting this go. And then when he confronts the perpetrator, the schemer behind all this, no one was killed. It's like these people, and it's like, who are they? Were they important? And the fact this person's a bit like, they're just collateral. They weren't even considered, and that's what really gets to Vimes, and that's where his anger and his sense of justice really
to burn the house down.
yes. There is some burning.
There is some burning. There is a, you know, quite a fun turning the tables.
But I think it's just interesting that these are the kind of people who aren't normally in books.
No.
Because they're not eventful lives. They're not people who are going out and doing things with a lot of agency. They're just quiet, regular folk.
Unless you're reading a very specific demographic of family saga.
Okay, sure, yeah. I do not generally read those, but now you say it, I guess I see what you mean.
The Yorkshire Lass, or
the ones with the brave-looking ladies on the front.
Yeah.
I remember seeing those.
This is all of that. You're in that kind of area for that.
I think there's still probably a little bit more impact in that than what's being described here. But
yes,
yeah. Did we want to kind of just go through the poisoning bit at the end, so we've kind of drawn that?
I think it's a good... So, obviously, Vimes has worked out who's done it, finally, after the patrician was worried he was going to have to give him clues.
Yeah, because the thing is, the patrician knew this was happening, and even at one point... So we can have a bit more clue than Vimes does. Vimes is just there going, is it the food? Is it the wallpaper? Is it the carpet? Is it being pumped into his room? Is it? And Vimes just like looking at everything until he suddenly realizes that the thing he's using to look at things is light. And what's providing the light? It's the candles. And then this is how it all ties together, because there were arsenic soaked wicks in the candles. And then that's the candle factory was where the Golem King was working. Yeah. And it's also found because there are a load of dead poisoned rats.
And we get to meet an early Feegle in the Wee Mad Arthur.
Well, I think he says he's a gnome, but yes, it's a tiny guy who's very aggressive and very Scottish, who ends up saving Fred Colin, who just popped round to see them and then gets tied up, and then he rescues him, and then Colin gets caught in the chaos of the animals and decides he's not going to retire to a farm because he just spent a while riding a bull and then slipping around in the remains of stuff that the animals left behind. Oh, and then he goes down the creek you go down with no paddle.
Yes.
Because he ends up being rescued through the sewers, so yes. But
he got a little bit too close to nature and didn't like it.
Yeah. Wee Mad Arthur basically sources rats, because obviously dwarves eat rats, so he sources rats for the dwarf. Yeah,
there was a batch of poison, a bad
batch of rats that made people ill.
Yeah. Led to Gimlet having to serve chicken.
Shaped as rats.
Yes.
Rat nuggets.
Yes.
It's like those dinosaur shapes you get out of chicken. Yeah. Except, like, chickens are dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So there's all these bits that kind of come together, and that's kind of how the golems were involved a bit. Then, this is the horrible pun, the guy who does the candle maker who has the coat of arms has a thing with a fish on the top, but it's got a light in it, like it's a fish lamp.
Yeah.
But some of it's in French to show it's like old and fancy, so it's a lampe de poisson, and obviously poisson looks a bit like poison, and there's basically a whole load of punning in there, and then Vimes looks around and is like, he showed it to me. He saw all these horrible puns, silly references and things, and then, as soon as he realises...
I think the thing was the dragon was so arrogant to think that this, Vimes wouldn't...
This jumped-up copper.
Yeah, wouldn't be able to solve it. So in the end, Vimes...
Whereas obviously Vetinari knew.
Yeah.
But
Vetinari kept having to poison himself.
Well, he allowed himself to be poisoned, but it actually shows him at one point getting a candle and like a knife and getting like, it's like, he better figure out soon or I'll have to start dropping hints. But there's a bit where Vetinari is talking to his secretary Drumknot and is sort of saying about, letting Vimes, because Vimes has to figure this out, he has to get ahead of steam under it. If you tell him or if you lead him, it won't work. And then Drumknot's a bit like, it seems it's lucky for you that Commander Vimes exists, otherwise you'd have to invent him. And Vetinari's like, well, I rather think I did. So it's again, it's the idea that Vetinari's kind of puppeting Vimes.
Vetinari's puppeting Vimes in order to help...
Vetinari's puppeting the entire city.
Yes, but in order to kind of guide social... construct
Yeah, because one of the things with the Dragon King of Arms is that and we know early on, in fact, that he's involved because he has this little vocal tick, and early on a conspirator is talking to somebody else and does the vocal tick. She's like, it's this guy. Yeah. But you don't know who he's talking to and you don't know why or how, unless you read it before and then you start to remember. But his whole thing is that he has all those books, of aristocracy, and this I think is sort of started the idea that vampires get a bit obsessive over things, because his hobby or special interest seems to be tracking all these bloodlines. And he actually makes a point to Vimes a bit like he knows who Carrot is, but he also knows that Carrot's in a relationship with Angua, and he's like, well, we don't want a king who has puppies. And it's basically just prejudice.
Yes.
So we can't dilute our bloodline with, werewolf blood. I think even though he's treating it like he's like the bloody kennel club.
Yes.
So it's again treating humans and puppeting them, and so he's happy to have Nobby be the figurehead so that the aristocracy can keep doing what they're doing, and that keeps him in his influence. So that's the thing that Vimes burns.
Yes, he burns. Yeah, he rescues all the animals, the heraldic animals, because obviously you have actual animals posing for the things, because that's
the coats of arms.
Yeah,
it's just a fun joke.
And then he just basically burns it down after poisoning the Dragon of Arms with holy water candles.
Yeah.
So which is slightly strange, but why not?
Well, it's basically returning the plot back to centre.
Yeah.
It's like, arsenic won't hurt me. It's like, no, that's why we dip these wicks in holy water. Which again, the slight thing of having vampires that have these sort of things, but there's not like Christianity to base it off of, but I guess like general religious stuff.
On the topic of vampires,
Yes.
we do have a bit of a running joke throughout, which is basically the vampire managing to pick the worst jobs possible for a vampire.
A vampire keeps showing up at the watch house and complaining that he's been murdered because various of his jobs he keeps dying, and it's like, maybe you should stop doing this.
He was in a pencil factory, so he got staked. Things like the
he was working at a warehouse selling religious artifacts.
Yeah,
so of course,
holy water.
I think
basically.
I think wasn't this like that? I feel like something with garlic.
Yeah, all of these silly things that and I think it's kind of hinting a little bit about later on in the Truth we meet, or might be earlier in the Truth actually, Otto van Schreck, the photographer.
Otto's in the Truth.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying I can't remember whether he appears earlier, but
no, because he appears in that and then he appears later.
Yeah, the vampire that loves photography, but he has a flash gun that basically turns him to dust, so he has to rig up.
He has to work around it.
Yeah. That amuses me greatly.
I mean, I don't think it's a reference to that. I think this might be where the scene.
That's what I mean. It's kind of this the idea of vampires who wanting to do things and end up picking really not the best things for them.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of this. Yeah, I think this is a nice thing about reading this through an order. You can kind of see like, oh, was this the seed of this?
Yeah.
Or like somebody will say something and like, oh, that's a whole book later.
Yeah.
Do you want to go through, like, there's a few jokes.
Yeah.
So obviously there's that guy. There's a comment about royal inbreeding being so bad that the last one tried to breed with himself, which is clearly a reference to the Habsburgs. But also, I honestly, until I read that, I thought that was in Blackadder. I swear that was in Blackadder. My dad had a book of all the scripts of the 4 series that I read quite a lot. I think I probably read it more than him. And I would swear that was in there, but it was in this. But I was reading that at the same sort of time I was reading Pratchett.
Yeah,
so, there's also, there's a joke about this. Somebody says, they call themselves seamstresses, hem. Which is just funny because it could be an obnoxious type of laugh, but obviously hemming. Fire escapes were unknown in Ankh-Morpork, and the flames generally had to leave via the roof.
much like why there's not a fireman's guild in Ankh-Morpork. People objected.
They'd wander around going, goodness, this house is very dry.
Very flammable. I mean, it is. I mean, because the Thieves Guild very much about protecting yourself by paying them not to rob you.
Yeah. Talking about references later, there's a bit where, I can't remember exactly what it was about, but something like being a cog in a glass clock. And I was like, glass clocks.
Yeah, you get to see that later.
Yeah. I already mentioned the week in rebuilding, we have the pottery bit, but yeah. There's one bit where Angular says to Cheery, I think after she explains about the Yudas go a bit like, you pick up all sorts of odds and ends of stuff in the watch. And I feel like that kind of describes these books, certainly this period of the watch books, very well. There's all sorts of stuff packed into it. There's characters, there's information, there's stuff about the city, and it's busy like the city or like the watch itself. Like there's all this sort of stuff in it. They feel, whereas some of the other books are a bit, the location's what it is, and you've got that, and you like Lanka gets described in different ways, which showing like it's hilly and it's rural, and you might have specific bits, but there's just so much packed in. It's kind of like that thing I have about the difference between country miles and city miles. There's just so much more stuff because there's so much more people and events. Which is not to say the other books aren't full of stuff, but it just sort of has this kind of like packed, busy sort of feeling.
Yeah.
Which feels quite vibrant, like a city.
So there we go. So in the end, the patrician is saved.
He would have saved himself, but yes, he's officially saved.
The watch gets another dartboard in thanks from the patrician.
I mean, they've already opened several watch houses.
Yeah, but you needed, but to try to keep playing darts. So all wrapped up nicely. So yes, another excellent watch book.
Yes. I think introducing Cheery as an ongoing character and kind of opening up that forensic side of things, which, again, Vimes originally describes as, I'm not even quite sure exactly what this is, but I need somebody where if I say, is it this, they can kind of look into it and figure it out, which in this book it's mostly, is it arsenic? But Cheery also does the photography and the zooming in and... Enlarge. And the imp's a bit like, you're a weird mister.
Yeah. I know. This is definitely, as I say, I think, this sort of period is definitely my, the area of the watch I enjoy a lot. So definitely want to read. So, with all of that, we'll be back next time with Hogfather.
Yes, we will probably be reading Hogfather in July. which is interesting, but I am assured by Ben McKenzie of the Pratt Chat podcast, which people should go check out, that Hogswatch in July is a grand tradition down under, so I guess that will be for our Southern Hemisphere listeners, should we have any.
We'll just have to, while we're sweltering in whatever stupid temperature Britain gets up to this summer.
I don't think we can reset. We've just mentioned Australia. It's not actually that hot here. We're just not used to it. But yes, it's not super wintry. But
definitely not super wintry.
We will do our best. Maybe it will help us cool ourselves.
Well, yes, which I think The Whole Father is one of my most read books, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. And that would also be halfway. Well, not quite halfway, but it will. It's
I think
close.
We've decided to go with like rounding it. So yeah, it's halfway through.
Yeah, because for the numbering unit we're using, Shepherd's Crown is 41, and I think that one will be its own.
Yeah, that's the only one that's not a reread for me. I've not read that before.
So yes,
I'm basically taking several years to go up to reading that one book.
So yes, for us, there's 40 books for the and then the last one. So yes, we'll be halfway through. So it'll then also be time for the second quadrant review, or the halfway through review, or the semicircle review.
Quadrant 2, halfway through.
There we go. If you do have any feedback you want to give, any, this is your favourite novel that we've done so far, what you've thought about it.
If you want to tell us stuff about how we're doing, about Discworld, about anything you like, particularly from this first half, anything you're looking forward to, let us know.
Yeah, anything like that. Our email address is diningtablediscworld@gmail.com.
We are also on BlueSky at dtdiscworld.
Yep.
And we are on Facebook a little bit. We're not on there loads, but if you post something, we'll probably see it.
Yes, and that's under Dining Table Discworld as well.
We also, these are kind of going up on YouTube, aren't they? But
they are on YouTube as well, yes, under Dining Table Discworld. It will tell me if you've commented there. So yes, you can find us both. These are going up as videos on YouTube and a podcast on YouTube, because it's all automated.
But the videos don't have anything visual.
No, it's got a waveform on it.
Oh, okay, sure.
It's basically us.
We don't have time to do anything visual. We're just doing audio. That's...
And frankly, we're also doing this around our dining table. Our camera setup would not be that brilliant, so.
It'd just be us that would be very interesting.
We'll also have to tidy the background up, and So, with all of that, we're going to say, see you next time.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to Dining Table Discworld. You can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Dining Table Discworld. You can also find us on BlueSky at dtdiscworld. All our other contact information and credits for our music can be found in our show notes. Thank you for listening again, and we'll see you in our next episode.